Hi, I'm Francina.
I'm Jackie.
And welcome to the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast.
This podcast is an inquiry into whether rest and love and justice can produce transformative social change. The dominant narrative is this overwork and this glorification of it, especially in the justice space. And here, we're going to question that notion.
Come sit with us as we meet our collective humanity and share stories around rest, love, and justice. It is our hope to create a shift that enables us to recognize that racial justice work is a human issue. It affects us all.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Francina, and this is
Jackie.
Wonderful. We're so excited for this special episode that we're bringing you this week that is focused on Juneteenth, and we have the most incredible guest. Her name is Shonda Buchanan. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. Thank you.
Yes. So Shonda is really, truly one of the most remarkable people I've met most recently. She is an author, wrote the incredible book called Black Indian, and has written several other books. She is a professor. She is a poet. And is just an expert on Black history, on African-American studies. I'm in awe. And so I'm just going to invite her to speak into the space and tell us a little bit about yourself and share what feels good to you for us to know about who you are and what brings you to the space.
Yeah, no, again, I'm really grateful to be able to talk about, this subject matter, Juneteenth. And I think because my work, my entire life, and it's interesting, someone asked me this question the other day, kind of like, what do you focus on? And for me, my entire life has really been, without labeling it, it's been culture, it's been race, it's been ethnicity, it's been identity and migration and landscape and loss, right? But as a young poet, as a young writer, I started writing, I think, my first real poem was 9. And then another good poem, but it's 16. So what is that? 9 years later, or 7 years later. And then I started writing good poetry again, I think at 23. But that's what it means to be a novice or to be an apprentice, right, to the work. And so you're continually working on it. And for me, I've always used language as a tool to do that. So you said to introduce myself, and I just started talking about my art and my craft and my work. But I've been teaching, university level for about 23 years. I teach at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, and I also teach in the graduate creative writing program at Alma College in Alma, Michigan. I am probably tri-coastal, but I call myself a citizen of the world. So California, the Midwest, East Coast, and then I love to travel. Last year I was in 4 different countries. That was incredible. That was amazing. So in one of the countries that I was in, I am an English language specialist for the Department of State. So I was in Brazil teaching identity, culture, language for 3 weeks. And that was an amazing experience. So I'm really lucky that, being a writer, having my MFA degree from Antioch University, my degrees from Loyola Marymount University, I'm lucky that everything has just dovetailed into my vocation, which is language.
Yeah, that's incredible. And because I am a traveler myself, I have to know, what are the countries you've been to?
Yeah, so last year, Belize was, I was in Belize in April. I was in Paris in May. Belize was vacation. That was a real vacation. Paris was a writer's retreat. And then July, Brazil. And I was all over Brazil, Manaus, Belém. It was incredible. Brasilia, the capital. And then at the end of the year, I was in Italy. And I was in Rome, I was in Venice, the historic center, and I was actually there teaching in the MFA creative writing program. And it's an amazing program. I love our director, Sophronia Scott, who is also an author. Shout out, Sophronia. And she's amazing. You should have her on your show. She's fantastic. But she conceived the graduate creative writing program and has been pulling in Michigan writers. It's a low residency program. And she said, I always envisioned this as a study abroad program. So Venice was our first study abroad, and then we're going to England in 2025.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, yeah. Who better to talk about Juneteenth?
Well, and I love, and I was just going to say, I love that your travel, intersects with your vocation too, like you said,
Exactly.
To be able to travel, experience a new place and write and make poetry like that. Yeah. What a beautiful life.
I have to ask too, what is the arc of your story that brought you to this work?
That's a great question. The arc of my story is recovering my ancestry and reclaiming my ancestry. That's been a lifelong process. I was the kid who would say, "Mama, what are we?" Right? You say that we are African American with a little bit of, I'm so sorry, the reverse. You say that we are Indian and French and German with a very little bit of African American or Black in me. But what are we? Where are the tribes? And so she was really tired of answering my questions. And eventually she's like, "Shonda, could you please stop asking questions?" But I couldn't. So I put myself on that path to find the ancestry. I wanted to know, what does it mean to be an African American who grew up in Michigan, which is where I was born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan, with that narrative of mixed raciality, but you don't know where you come from. And in the academy, in the university, we call it, that's our research question, right? So it's you're working towards your research question. And then I just started tracing them. When I went to I was teaching at Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. They had a fantastic genealogy library in Hampton proper. And one of the, shout out to the librarian, Anita Harrell, because she said, "We've got this whole entire genealogy room. You can use it." So use that, started finding my people. I actually had already gone to the Church of Latter-day Saints facility in Salt Lake City, Utah, during a Sundance Institute film workshop. And I was just really, really just, digging in the dirt, where are you? Where are you? Who are our people? Where are these tribes, that you say we belong to? And finally, I traced my ancestors back 11 generations to the Kahari in the Eastern Band Cherokee. The Kahari in Sampson County, North Carolina. The Eastern Band Cherokee, also in the Halifax area, North Carolina area. That's on my mom's side. And then also on my mom's grandpa side is one of our great grandmothers has Delaware Cherokee written on one of our pictures, full blood Delaware Cherokee. And then on my dad's side, it was Choctaw. So it was a convergence, and to be able to put all of this in Black Indian was such it was gratifying work. It was really gratifying to find those narratives. And I'm still working on the African narrative because I'm here in North America. So I have access to those records. But because of enslavement, there's a lot that's lost. So now I have to go back and I've got to find them. And, I speak a little French. Je parle enfant. Je parle français un petit peu. So I can read more, and so it's okay, let me try to find those Senegals, the Senegalese or the Senegambian or the, who are those West Africans? So I finally did my DNA and rather did the African ancestry DNA. And they say that my matrilineal line is Mindy from Sierra Leone, right? Yeah. So here's the piece about going now, how do we get back to Juneteenth with this, right? So here's the piece about those Black folks who were still enslaved in Galveston, right, Texas. Those people were they were the I want to say at once, kind of a bit of a lost tribe. You know, they were the ones who had worked all their lives. They probably had their ancestry, like they knew oral history, oral narrative, but they, as we know, with Africans, Africans who came to America were not allowed to speak their language. If they spoke their own language, they were punished, or not allowed to do their ceremonies. If they did that, they were punished. So they had already been oppressed to the point of we're just going to keep working, right? And that was why the Juneteenth happened. That's why they stayed, you know, because it was like, if you leave, you will experience more pain than you've experienced already. They'd been beaten down. So, yeah, but I know you have questions, but I just think about, you know, that sense of that intersection of, you know, trying to find your identity, your ancestry, trying to empower yourself, right? And that's why Juneteenth is so important for us right now. It's like, you know, the last of the free.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, growing up in Zimbabwe, I, even to this day, had schools where we were not allowed to speak our native language. We had to speak in English. And if you were caught speaking your native language, and this is like, you know, as early as 20-something years ago, right. You know, so I definitely can identify with that. And I just want to kind of bring us back to, like, what does Juneteenth mean to you? And, you know, if you can maybe even answer the question from the context of story for you. And if you have any intersection either in the work that you've done, you know, bringing forward that story around, the importance of Juneteenth in this moment.
So I'll tell you the reason it's important, and then I'll read a little section of a poem that I have called Juneteenth. So, it is important because it allowed for, you know, those Black folks who were still enslaved in Galveston. It allowed for them to claim the freedom, and then the reason we celebrate it is a reminder of that, the resilience, the persistence, and they weren't necessarily self-empowered because of the release, you know, because of the emancipation piece. But we have continually had to empower that moment in our own minds. That's what Juneteenth means to me, the celebration of it.
I love that. Empower that moment.
We've had to infuse power into that moment because we have to remind the world, you know, of what happened to us. Very unique on the world scale, on the global scale of our experience as Africans in the diaspora. So we've empowered that moment, and we continue to empower it. So the poem that I wrote, I was thinking about, again, the connection of the ancestry, and then the various parts of the puzzle that had to come together in order to free them. And so I start with one I call the first part of this, the body. And I started with looking at Phyllis Wheatley. Was Phyllis Wheatley's navel an Audi? Timothy Fitch, her buyer, especially directed the captain of the Phyllis not to take children or Africans whose navels protruded out. For some reason, this was unattractive to buyers, an unusual sight that scared them, a sign that this particular piece of property was either diseased or impure. After I read that, I looked at my navel. I would have been taken. 2, water. When you sing of us, always start with the water crossing, with the memory of Juju and cassava, cascade of fingers planting ancestors into a daughter's hair, like a map. Start with the cartography of us, not the losing. Start with the harvest songs hiding in our memories. Puse, puse, babadina. We wake every day infringed, disrelocated, looking over our shoulders for forgotten refrains, for refractions of Cora and Grigri in the silver sun, shells falling into hands of elders as they trade. Always start with the water crossing when you remember us, with song and prayer to lift us up out of posthumous seas, out of the mouth of sharks. Send us back to Ibo Landi, the place that we were first spun. And so there are 4 more sections to this poem. I won't read all of them.
I mean, I just want to pause there too. Bravo. I'm just, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your poem here in this space too, and to have it like live as well. Like just, it's just very powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The line disrelocated is specifically connected to the Juneteenth, folks. And then the whole of the African enslavement. There's something that I say when I teach African American history and culture, and I tell my students, I say, when you hear the word slave, what do you think of? And immediately our mind goes to a Black person. And I say, this is where we have to change our language and change our thinking. Slave does not mean Black person. An enslaved African gives the ethnicity, the race, the cultural, the heritage, right, the roots of who they are. An enslaved African, an enslaved Black person. When you say slave, that is relegating Black people to a space that the oppressors has relegated us to. So we can't do that to ourselves.
That's all I can say about that. I was secretly hoping that you would read us a poem, and I mean, we could be done, because I'm going to be buzzing all day. These words just like ruminating in my body, in my psyche, and just, reminding people to remember the regalness, the incredibleness, the beauty of us, and not what happened to us. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Growing up, would you say that your family celebrated Juneteenth? And did you have a cultural, maybe community around celebration of Juneteenth in the circles that you moved in and in the places that you lived?
No. So my people were on the migration trail from North Carolina to Kentucky and Tennessee, and then Indiana, and then Michigan. And along the way, we lost things. We lost memory. We particularly became forgetful because of that, the ostracization of mixed race peoples, of free people of color. We were free people of color, labeled free people of color. So when you are forced out of your state, your city, you're forced to sell your land. One of my ancestors, actually, there was a moment where after the Nat Turner Rebellion in 1831, the white slave owners essentially said, no person of color, no free people of color, no Black person can carry guns in the city. And one of my ancestors is on the petition to say, that's wrong. That's erroneous. We own land just like you. Some of us, and this is another fact, some of the Black people own slaves. But there was always this continual fighting, right? There's this struggle for selfhood, always. And when you're pushed on that migration trail, like many African Americans were, and I'm really curious to hear about your experience with the Zimbabweans and then, with Africa. Because Zimbabwe is a country, Africa's the continent, right? And so for us, it was essentially, we just kept, moving across the land until we got someplace where we felt relatively safe enough to start building settlements, which is in Indiana. My people are some of the first free people of color to build settlements in Indiana. And then my ancestors, Roberts, Staffords, Manuels, Curtis's, and I can name a few more. I'm actually writing a book about this, another book. But they moved into Michigan, which is where I was born and raised. So we lost stuff. So particularly, it was hard, I think, for my people to say, you know what, let's celebrate Juneteenth, or let's celebrate Blackness, or let's celebrate, and it was like, no, let's leave that over there, and then continue to, some of my people could pass, some of my folks could pass for white. So it's like, let's not rock the boat. And I think
Yeah. And I'm
that's
feeling
why,
it even as you say it. Yeah.
No, I'm
No,
going to say,
sorry, I interrupted your thought.
no, I think that I was born to be a writer so I could tell their stories, because so much had been forgotten and lost on the trail. And a part of being able to talk about Juneteenth, and being able to talk about the Middle Passage, and being able to bring that into my classrooms and bring that to lectures, is because I'm the eruption of all the things that have been pressed down.
Yes, and yes.
I'm the volcano.
Yes. No, yeah. And we need this eruption, We need this eruption. And what I was going to say is, it's very difficult for people to celebrate when they are on the survival train, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to survive an oppression. You're trying to immigrate, move away from trauma, move away from harm, right? And just kind of bringing it back to like questions that we like to focus on this podcast about stories around rest. And I wonder, for you growing up, did you feel like rest was modeled for you? And also bringing this piece up because I understand why most of us didn't know about Juneteenth until the racial uprisings happened, because tired folk don't have a lot of capacity to get into that space of celebration, right? I mean, if you're on the trauma train and you're just trying to make it, celebration of something that, celebration is the thing that was left behind when people came out of Juneteenth, and then they had to fight to still be recognized. And then, just like you said, your ancestors being told that they can't carry guns. And so how are they going to survive? How will they protect themselves? Right? Who's going to throw a party for Juneteenth? Right. And so I understand it. And I just wanted to see if, for you growing up, what is your story around rest?
Yeah.
And not necessarily like ancestrally for generations ago, but even like in your actual family of origin, in your family unit.
Yeah. So I prescribe to the theory of work hard, play hard. I've had to learn that because I do work hard. I am a recovering workaholic because the fight never stops. But I'm also one of those people who, since I was young, it was like, I need to read a book and rest my mind, or I'm gonna go take a nap in a tree. Like literally, we had a tree in my grandfather's on his farm in Mattawan, Michigan, where I would take a book up there and I'd go to sleep in this tree. Or when we lived in Kalamazoo, I was always looking for rest. I can sleep anywhere, I tell you. I can sleep anywhere. But on our porch, we had like a little seal on the porch. I could sleep on the porch. So yeah, rest is a part of resilience for me. It's and knowing this, it's interesting, the self-care piece. I've been doing that for a long time. Self-care, massages, silence, retreats, indigenous ceremonies. I do American Indian ceremonies, so I do sweat lodges and then African ceremonies as well. And so that's always been a place like prayer. Prayer is almost a place of rest for me, and then it's rejuvenation at the same time. So when you say, what does rest look like in the face of the historical trauma, rest is, I have to unplug. I'm going to close my eyes. Or I'm going to sit here and I'm going to pray and meditate, or I'm going to sit on the ground and I'm going to touch the earth, and the earth will give me energy. And it always happens like that. I am, and I'm the house blesser too. So I'm always, whenever, one of my friends or, I move into a new house, I get the sage out, I get the bells out, I'm like, let's bless this space. Let's bless this space. And that becomes rest for me too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm tracking time.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we need to kind of close our
Yes.
session here.
Yep.
We just want to thank you so much for just your insight. And I know that there's so much more that we could talk about,
Yep.
Especially around Juneteenth. And, we had other questions, but I feel like this feels like a good moment to pause and just in deep gratitude for your offering in this space, for your poem, for your time, and even the energy that you've brought forward as you're traveling. It just means the world to us.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Thank you both. Thank you so much.
Yes, we'll have to do a repeat in person. There's just more.
I would love to. I would love to read the whole poem in person for you.
That would be exceptional.
That would be wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah, we would love that. We can have a different,
We'll have a
deeper
Juneteenth
conversation.
spinoff.
Yeah. Yeah, again, like we've talked about before, like it should be year round.
Yeah.
Like even Black History Month, like this is, wrap around, and there's so many things too that that white bodies need to do to be in support as well. So we
I've been
can have
touting
that
that.
conversation too.
I've actually posted that on my Instagram last week when I said, I was like, Poetry Month, quote unquote, April. I was like, it's always Poetry Month. It's always Black History Month. It's always Asian American, Pacific Islander. It's always Women's History Month, domestic violence. For some reason, we have to codify it. It's an American thing to codify it. And for the whole person, I guess that goes back to the whole student. It's a continual, you live with it, right? It's your walk is what we call it on the red road. It's the way you walk. It's your walk. So we should be walking with it.
Absolutely. Dropping gems till the end. Oh my gosh. I just want to call you auntie because you feel like an auntie to me.
You can call me auntie.
Thank you.
I'm a grandma.
We appreciate you so much.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
Thank you.
your rest of
I'm
your
very
trip.
grateful. Okay.
Yeah.
Take good care. Thank you for your energy.
Thank you.
Bye, Shonda.
Bye.
And that's it for this episode, our Juneteenth special episode of the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast. Special thanks to Shonda Buchanan for being on this episode, for her incredible artistic gift and beautiful poem. I'm going to be thinking about that for days.
Spectacular.
Yeah, spectacular. All right, that's it.
Peace and love.
Peace and love.
And that is our show for this week. This episode was produced by The City Music. As for me, I'm Jackie Gao, and thanks to my co-host, Francina Call.
May you move through this week embodying rest, love, and justice in ways that are meaningful to you and your community. Thanks for joining us today. Peace and love.